All right, we want to start looking at the history of Taoism, just as certain aspects of Hinduism can be found looking at the history of India. The roots of Taoism can be found looking at the history of China. And we want to talk initially about the shamanic origins, really, really long ago history. Um, so, about 5,000 years ago, people began to settle along the Yellow River. So here's the Yellow River in northern China. Now we have this history of civilization, appearing for the most part in river valleys like the Nile River Valley, the Tigris Euphrates, the Indus River Valley, and this is true of China as well. Chinese civilization first emerged along the Yellow River, and then later the Yangtze River, but first in the north. And these were, before they settled down, these were shamanic peoples, tribal peoples. And they had, an animistic religion and a shamanic sort of culture. And the legendary Yu was the greatest of the chiefs of these peoples. Now this is all, we're talking mythic stuff here. This is really prehistory and myth, but it's important, and there's some historical antecedents in these myths. Yu had supernatural origins and was basically a werebear. He could turn into a bear, which is pretty cool. He had a book called the Book of Power Over the Waters, and he frequently traveled to the stars to consult celestial spirits. He did this by entering a trance and doing these dance steps right here, which are recorded in Taoist texts. He would dance and he would ascend to the heavens and consult with celestial spirits. He clearly was a shaman. Remember that shamans were common to every tribal religion. There are people who were regarded as having access to and influence in the world of good and evil spirits. In fact, the phrase "the Wu" simply refers to shamans because of this this original great legendary chief Yu. Shamans generally go away when we get into settled civilization, but not so. By the way, all of this history is taken from a book called Taoism, An Essential Guide by Eva Wong. I'll be referring to her a lot. She says that shamanism entered a new phase in ancient China with the development of literacy and a sedentary society. By the 12th century BCE, in the early part of the Zhou Dynasty, kings and nobles employed shamans as advisors, diviners, and healers. Shamanism became an institution, and shamans were expected to exercise their ability as a duty. So this is kind of unique in Chinese society. We get, actual history, civilization, settled civilization, and shamanism survives. Now, I want to depart and talk about Chinese dynasties for a minute. The Xia and Shang dynasty are almost mythical. We don't really know much about them, don't really know if they were real. It's kind of like King Arthur. But the Zhou was not a giant Chinese-wide civil empire, but it was a significant kingdom, and the Zhou dynasty was real. We have historical evidence of that. And shamanism survived into this actual historical dynasty. And the duties of shamans in the Zhou dynasty were, first of all, inviting the spirits. They would do that by going into a trance and letting the spirits take possession of them. They interpreted dreams. They read omens. This was the beginnings of something called the I Ching, the Book of Changes. This is a book of divination. You can go to Barnes & Noble right now and buy a copy. It's very difficult to understand. These were the forerunners of modern diviners. A few years ago, about 15 years ago, I actually was entered a Taoist temple in Hong Kong, and there was a woman who had this bundle of sticks, little plastic sticks, and she would rub them together chanting something, and then she would throw them against an altar, and then she would go up and look at them, look at the pattern of the sticks where they fell, and then gather them up and do it again. So the way this works is you throw the sticks, and then you look at the I Ching and look at the patterns and figure out what the sticks are telling you, what's being divined. So this is done today, and its origins are in this shamanic period with the Zhou. They obviously undertook rainmaking, And this is still done today in rural China by Taoist priests. And they did celestial divination, following the celestial way. They would look at the stars, the heavens, and see what they could find out about what was going to happen. So as the use of shamans waned during the Zhou, it continued to thrive in feudal kingdoms that replaced the Zhou in the south. So this is important because shamanism would continue as a practice in the south, which is typically more folksy, more open, more backward, considered by Northern Chinese. And so we go into history, recorded history, and we still have these shamanic practices happening in the south. Why am I talking about this? Well, the legacy of shamanism is very important in the later development of Taoism. Eva Wong says the most obvious incorporation of shamanic practices into Taoism was found in the religious and magical aspects of Taoism that emerged in the Han Dynasty. So this is important. Just as Hinduism has certain aspects buried deep in earlier tribal religion, Taoism definitely emerges from this shamanic period.